Good afternoon. It's Monday night, 8 o'clock. It's that time. Dialogue with Dozie. Hello, Dozie land. Hope everybody's doing all right tonight. Glad to be back in the seat tonight. It's that time of year when I'm gone quite a bit, and thank God for Jan and Kim and the Toya, the team Toyas for the takeovers that they do for us and everything to keep the show adrift. We've never missed a Monday night in 3 years. How about that? We've had some reruns, but we've never missed a show. We're so glad and we're so grateful to our loyal audience here in Dozie land. Hey, tonight, scheduled in with us is State Senator, doctor, preacher, well-rounded, recovering. I'm going to let her tell all of that story. Dr. Rosalind Osgood is going to be with us. Now, what has happened is Dr. Osgood was overbooked, and she did not know, but it is her intention to be with us at least by the midway point. At that point, if she's not, we may recalculate the show and bring her back on because we want an hour with Dr. Osgood for all that she does and all that she makes happen in our community. And her story in itself is compelling enough. A lot of stuff going on. There's a certain president that, KV is not with us tonight. He will probably be seeing lesser and lesser of him because of his new assignment. And I'm going to let him come on and tell you about it. I think we've got him booked in here next week, a week after next. We're having two brothers. One of them, Calvin Thomas, has been on before. A returned citizen. Calvin was actually on death row, and in just minutes, hours from his sentence being carried out, execution, and he was he got a stay of the execution and was ultimately released from prison after 40-some years. And Kim assisted him in authoring a book. And I have since befriended a friend who was in federal prison, and there were found some inadequacies, legalities with this case. And when he was released, a whole lot of brothers were released because he stood up to the federal government, and they found technicalities that they were all released. And he also wrote a book, and I'm in the process of reading his book. And what I want to do is have the two of them come on. I think that show is scheduled for week after next. And you heard Calvin talk about his case. We won't talk as much about the case. What I want to talk about is the construction of the book, chronicling everything that happened, and how you actually take time to put a book together, and the process of getting people to assist you and the finances, because I just believe out here in Dozie land, there's many of us who, all of us have life experiences. And I just think that if we put our experiences, there's a market for our experiences or our knowledge or our skill set. And there are book nerds everywhere. And if we make it appealing and market it correctly, people would want to read our product. And so I'm going to have them come on, and because Kim was a part of that process for Calvin, I want to do it when he's available to be here and just talk about putting putting a book together. And so that's what we want to do week after next. Next week we have scheduled Pastor Rhonda Thomas. Pastor Rhonda is the executive director of Faith in Florida, a nonprofit. It's a 501(c), but it also has a 501(c) component to it that allows it to actively do political work. But the 501(c) does is that's what I'm affiliated with. We do voter registration and civil We organize against things that are not that are not conducive to the majority of Floridians or local municipalities, or stop the violence. It's just organizing. And she also has an amazing story that leads to her telling what she's done. Pastor Rhonda was one of the ones who led the charge for Florida to allow convicted felons to vote in this state. And that was something that I thought we would never see in conservative Florida. I had absolutely no idea that Florida would go as far to the crazy right as Governor Despicable has taken it. We're just praying that in as much as Gillum, who lost to DeSantis in 2018, was only 30,000 votes short, and returning citizen population would have made that difference had he been available to run again this time. We're praying that we can get somebody in office that can turn things around and make Florida a palatable state. Right now, I'm embarrassed when I traveled nationally. I was at a convention out of the state this past week, and I was just embarrassed talking. I was with people from Mississippi and Alabama, and just talking about how crazy Florida has become with its laws. We got to get Florida to where it is a darling of the South, a beautiful tourist attraction again, and not a place where you risk going to jail if you're a part of a protest and somebody drops a bottle and it breaks and you get arrested. They have just turned the laws and made them despicable. Or where you can't read about Harriet Tubman in the schools, or you can't read about George Floyd's situation, or you can't read about slavery. That's almost like un-American. And Pastor Rhonda is one of those who has the hope to not give in and not give up. And so next week she's going to talk about that. I know it's back to back. Yeah, we hope Senator Osgood can come on and shed a lot of light tonight. And if she doesn't, then we'll get her another time. She was most gracious and willing to be in. She was unaware that her staff had overbooked her for the night. But anyway, we'll carry on. There's a lot of stuff going on. I'm resisting looking at the TV because there's a certain basketball game on that has a certain team that's located not too far from my house, and they're in game 5. It's a win and go home game for the Heat now. They're down 3-1 in the series to what looks like an insurmountable test. That Denver team is pretty tough. If the Heat can bring Dame Dollar on next year, so I don't mess up the name, they can get him in here next year. The Heat will contend with anybody. Won't have to have all of these miraculous series like they've had to get to this point. They can contend with the Denvers of the world or the LAs of the world. But they have a monumental task in winning tonight and continuing the series, getting it back here on, I think, Thursday night, and then trying to stay alive from there to push it to a game 7. So we'll see how that comes out. But there's a lot going on here just south of the border of my house. There's a certain ex-president who will, for the second time in less than 60 days, walk into a court of law where he will face an indictment, where he will, in effect, be arrested for 37 charges, including espionage in federal court this time. And remember, that's 2 indictments, two jurisdictions that has indictments. He has 2 other indictments likely coming. The January 6th insurrectionist case is still pending. And the strongest, I thought the strongest of the 4 cases is the one in Georgia, where he interfered with an election by trying to get the Secretary of Election to interfere with the numbers. And that case is still pending. And of course, the governor and the state of Georgia, remember Georgia is the cradle of the South, they have tried to strip local district attorneys of their prosecutorial duties based on President Trump being in the crosshairs of the district attorney there. And it's just, the laws are just ridiculous in this nation now. I know a lot of things are going on and a lot of changes are taking place, but I never thought the voters' rights laws would be repealed. I never thought anybody would ever tamper with the right to vote, as it has happened in all of the states here in the South in Texas. That lunatic out there it's ridiculous. So that's where we are. So tonight I want to talk about what's going to happen tomorrow as we wait on, hopefully in the next few minutes, we'll get to see Senator Osgood. Let's take a second. I'm going to have to qualify because I'm drinking. I'm drinking out of a cup. I am drinking grape drink. I would not dare. Drinking is not one of the things I do anyway, but I would not come on the show. Usually when I'm drinking water, I'm drinking out of a clear cup. I didn't have time. I had a lot of things going on. I'm drinking out of a cup, a throwaway cup, and I'm drinking grape drink, okay? So I needed a drink. And that's all it is. Usually I do that on the cover of another guest. When the camera's on another guest, I'll drink whatever I'm drinking, water or whatever, but tea. But tonight I'm doing this by myself for a while, so I just got to moisten the throat. So President Trump is facing a federal indictment for some 37 charges, including espionage. And these charges are dealing with his handling of classified documents. Now, since these documents have been discovered, and since the Justice Department, first the archives, the federal archives, asked for the documents, and when they were not given over to them, then the Justice Department had to be brought involved, and they were lied to. Documents were moved in a deceitful effort to move them around and to conceal them. And one of the things that the ex-president, well, let me do it like they do on the stations, the twice impeached, once found liable for not sexual harassment, but something sexual, and indicted now twice in federal court and in the state of New York for tampering with documents. That president has asked people to move documents, to hide documents, to conceal documents. He has lied to prosecutors about the placement of documents, having possession of documents, and he is playing the victim. It's crazy. There's so many implications to this. What I'm about to say, I'm going to give the disclaimer. I've not lost my mind. But this I will say. I will go out and politic for Donald Trump if it was a choice of Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. When Trump became president, it was a state of shock and say, okay, I got to trust you on this one, God, that, we're not going to war. Or the country's not going to be sold out to Russia. But with DeSantis, I might have to move to Costa Rica somewhere. I just don't know if I could survive his presidency. He is pathetic, ridiculous. I would much rather have Trump than DeSantis. I'd rather have the current president, but if that changes, I cannot deal with a DeSantis presidency. I just can't do it. I'll go out and campaign for Chris Christie. Heck, I'll even campaign for the albino former vice president Pence, but I will not. I cannot deal with DeSantis in the White House. That would just be the most miserable 4 years that would happen. But with that being said, we're watching to see just how this thing is going to play out, because the court case against President Trump in New York, that judge has told him emphatically, it doesn't matter what's going on nationally. And he was, of course, talking about the presidential election. It doesn't matter what's going on. Come March, that case was going to trial. There would be no delays or no continuances or anything of that sort. So if President Trump would be convicted, or Donald Trump was to be convicted in state court in the state of New York, he couldn't be pardoned if DeSantis was president or if he was president. He couldn't, he cannot be pardoned from state. Can you believe that? The state, he cannot, the president cannot pardon him. But in federal court, if he is indicted on the more serious charges of espionage or those charges that Jack Smith just indicted him of, and the case is going to come out of Miami because that's where the documents were being mishandled. If he was in office or another Republican, they would have the opportunity to do just what we saw happen in 1968 when Gerald Ford, when Nixon resigned, made Ford president, and then Ford in turn, he in turn pardoned Nixon. Now, my feelings on that was because I lived through that period, and Nixon, most people say that was a deal that was cut. Spiro Agnew had been indicted himself. He had resigned from the White House, and so Nixon brought Gerald Ford in as his replacement, and then when the heat became too great and it looked like he was facing an impeachment, and if Nixon had been impeached by the House of Representatives, which Trump has twice been, the Senate was all Democratic, and most Republicans would have voted to impeach President Nixon, and that had to remove him from office. That had never happened. Clinton has been impeached. Trump has been impeached twice, but neither of them lost their trial in the Senate. The Senate voted not to remove them from office. But without a doubt, President Nixon would have been removed in 1968 from office. Many of his Republican counterparts went to him and told him it was best for him to resign than have the stain on his legacy of being impeached. You know what the irony, I'm going way back in history, but the irony of that is that Nixon won the election by a landslide. What had happened was he said he was aware that they called them the White House plumbers, that members of former CIA leader Gordon Liddy pulled together a group who went in and broke into the Democratic National Headquarters across the street from the White House in the Watergate building to find secrets or whatever that the McGovern campaign were going to use. And it didn't matter. Nixon won the election by a real landslide. I think McGovern may have won 2 or 3 states. And then this came out after the election, and it evolved to Nixon leaving office. So Ford becomes president, and he hasn't warmed up the seat in the Oval Office yet before he goes in and he impeaches Nixon. Of course, in 1972, Jimmy Carter defeated him. And a lot of the reason that Ford was defeated was because he had pardoned Nixon. Now, I just looked at it the other day with all the stuff going on with Trump and all of these possibilities hanging in the wind. They played a lot of tape on. And President Ford was a good and a decent man, and he was proven to be a decent president. He got accused of being clumsy because he slipped several times, bumped his head on the airplane door, but he was a good and decent man. But the single thing, Jimmy Carter was a very charismatic presidential candidate as governor of Georgia. But the thing that made it easy for him to beat Ford was that pardon hung over Ford's head, and everybody thought that it was something dirty in Denmark, that they had in fact cut a deal, that a deal had been cut, and that Nixon made Ford vice president with the intention that if he had to get out of Dodge, he would pardon him because those crimes were federal crimes, and he had the ability to pardon him, and that's what he did. Well, in this case, if Trump is indicted, if he is convicted of any of these 37 federal charges, the president of the United States can pardon him. But if he is indicted in New York, or if Georgia presses charges, not indicted, if he's convicted, and if he's indicted in Georgia, which I think is the strongest out of all of those 4 cases that loom, if he's indicted and then convicted in Georgia, in neither of those cases can Trump be pardoned. Now the governors of those states, and there is a Republican governor in Georgia, they would probably pardon him. But the governor of New York is not a Republican, and very rarely is there a Republican governor in Georgia. So Trump will be facing charges. Now, what we're hearing is that if Trump were convicted of these federal charges here, remember he has another federal case pending, that is the June 6th insurrectionist case. That's proven to be a stronger case, because everybody who was arrested in that case, not one person yet has been exonerated. Everybody has lost a court case. Either they lost in court or they pled guilty and took time. So it's looking like that's going to be an easy case for conviction there also. But that, again, is a federal case. If there's a Republican president, Trump could be pardoned from those charges. The other question is we ask is, if he is convicted on any of these charges, would an ex-president actually do jail time? That's I don't know what my YouTube people are saying, but that's what I would really like to see. Would like to get some responses from you all and see if that's what you would like to see. If you would like to see the president of the United States actually do jail time, and what the Republicans are running